Hello, welcome back to the Priestess Path. I'm Alyssa, and today we're continuing our journey through Remembrance astrology with the South Node. If you've already read this week's reflection, thank you for spending that time with me. And if you haven't yet, don't worry, this conversation stands on its own. Today, I want to linger with one idea that sits at the very heart of the South Node. Not the idea of the past, not karma, not even memory, but familiarity. Because I wonder how much of what we call who I am is actually just what has become most familiar to us. Think about that for a moment. The way you respond when someone criticizes you. The role you instinctively take in relationships. Whether you find yourself overgiving or overachieving. Whether you disappear into the background or feel responsible for everyone else's well-being. Most of us don't consciously choose those responses. We inherit them. We practice them. We repeat them. And eventually they stop feeling like responses altogether and they begin to feel like personality, like identity, like truth. And yet, the South Node quietly asks us, are they? One of the reasons I wanted to write this reflection is because I've never felt quite satisfied with describing the South Node as simply the past. And of course, the past matters. Our childhood matters, our families matter, our ancestors matter. Perhaps even other lifetimes matter. But what interests me is more not when those stories began, it's the fact that we're often still living inside them. And that's why in Remembrance astrology I describe the South Node as the archive of the soul. An archive isn't something we throw away, it's something we preserve. It contains everything, the beautiful, the painful, the necessary, the forgotten, the treasured, the historical. Some things inside that archive still belong in the life we're living now, and some don't. And that's an important distinction because remembrance is never about erasing our history. It's about recognizing that history is not the same thing as identity. There's a sentence from this week's reflection that stayed with me while I was writing it. The soul isn't trying to erase its archive. It's trying to stop living inside it. I think that's what compassion looks like. Not rejecting the woman we once had to become. Not criticizing her. Not trying to heal ourselves by declaring that everything before now was wrong. But instead thanking her. Recognizing her intelligence. Understanding that every survival strategy once served a purpose, because they did. We became who we needed to become. And perhaps that's one of the greatest acts of love we can offer ourselves, to stop asking what's wrong with me and begin asking what wisdom was I trying to preserve. The South Node tells me that every pattern has a story, every fear has a history. Every protective strategy began as an act of devotion to life. The question is simply whether that strategy still belongs to the woman we are becoming. And that's where remembrance begins. Not in self-improvement, not in fixing ourselves, but in seeing ourselves clearly enough so that choice becomes possible. When something has remained unconscious, it runs our lives. But once it becomes conscious, it becomes a doorway. And perhaps that's why the South Node always points to the next stage of the journey. Eventually, recognizing the pattern isn't enough. Eventually, we want to know what lies beneath it. What grief, what longing, what forgotten part of ourselves has been patiently waiting underneath the identities we created to survive. And that's where our next reflection begins, with Persephone. not simply as the queen of the underworld, but as the woman who discovers that descent is sometimes the only path back to what has always belonged to us. Until next time, I'll leave you with the question I asked at the end of this week's reflection. What part of your identity feels so familiar that you've never questioned whether it's actually yours? Thank you for listening. Until next time, may your path be one of gentle remembrance.